Welcome to Developing the Leader Within podcast, the podcast that brings you leadership insights from the brightest minds shaping our world. Join us as we dive into conversation with trailblazers, innovators, and change makers, spanning every corner of the globe. Get ready to explore new perspectives, gain actionable insights, and become the leader the world needs today. Unleash your potential. Tune into Developing the Leader Within podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Let's embark on this transformative journey together. Developing the Leader Within podcast, leading beyond limits.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we are speaking with Lorraine K. Lorraine is the founder of Rise Learning Solutions, a LinkedIn top voice, corporate keynote speaker and trainer, and a LinkedIn Learning and Stanford CSP instructor. She is the author of Unforgettable Presence, Get Seen, Gain Influence, and Catapult Your Career. Lorraine, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited. This has been a long time coming.
It is, and most of my guests do that since we book out a year ahead. But it's so nice to have you with us today. Folks, we will be speaking about mastering presence, the key to leading with confidence and influence. But before we get into that, great conversations, tell us a little bit about you.
Of course, I spent the first decade of my career as a founding editor at different tech companies. So I worked at LinkedIn for 6 years as a founding editor. Most recently, I was at a company named Prezi as a founding editor. And then in 2022, I got impacted by the tech layoffs. And I had to figure out, did I want to apply for another job or go out on my own? And so last year, I started my business, Rise Learning Solutions, in January. So we're coming up on 2 years now. And it's been wonderful. So as you said, Enrique, I speak, I do some consulting and executive coaching, I teach, I have my book coming out. So a lot of exciting things happening and on the horizon.
I am ecstatic for that and know that all your hard work with all those agencies has definitely panned out and led to this journey that you're on now. And as we are talking about presence, how do you define presence? Because we all have a individual definition of that. And
Yes.
why is it essential for leadership success?
I have redefined presence. So I think a lot of people, when they hear presence, they think of executive presence and how you show up in a room, a physical room, right, with other people around you. And as I started doing my work, thinking about all the different areas of expertise I chose to talk about professional presence because I think presence does a really good job, or the word presence does a really good job of, yes, encompassing how others see you. So maybe more of that executive presence, how you show up in a room. And then I realized presence is also where others see you. So, for example, people would come to me and say, Lorraine, you have such a strong LinkedIn presence. I thought, that's interesting. You haven't met me necessarily, but you are commenting on my presence. And so then I realized, okay, presence actually in this day and age of work includes a lot of different things. So your presence in person, your virtual presence, right, on video, your presence on platforms like LinkedIn, even your presence when you are not even physically in the room, right? Like we all have brands, career brands, personal brands that speak on behalf of us when we're not there. So that's a form of presence too, right? Because if people are talking about you, you're kind of there in the room as well. So that's how I define it, how and where others see you. And I really love talking about this just because it encompasses so many important things that are needed to succeed in this modern way of modern world of working.
I love that definition, but we see it often, right? When you say, "Hey, a leader is sponsoring you," they are in their mind, they're putting you somewhere
Yeah.
where they already see you,
Yes.
although you don't see yourself there, right? And
Yeah.
so it's so important for those that are listening to really think about that aspect of presence because we seldom work on that.
Hmm.
And so,
Yeah.
wonderful descriptor of what that is for you and how it leads to success. Now, can you share an example from your career or someone you've coached where
Mhm.
presence made a tangible impact on their outcomes?
Let's see, I have so many examples. I'll talk about myself first, and I think also it relates to my clients. So at the start of 2021, this is when I started public speaking, just getting out there, not necessarily to pursue it as a career path, but simply because I wanted to get better at this skill. And so at the start of 2021, there were a lot of events and virtual was still very much, I think it's still a thing now, but like we were all virtual still. And working on my video presence and how I showed up on camera allowed me to become known as a virtual speaker and allowed me to build my confidence and come across professionally, whether I was on the virtual stage or simply in a team meeting. And I think with my clients, the people I coach, a lot of people, I think, neglect the virtual presence piece because we think, oh, okay, I know how to log on to Zoom and mute and unmute and do reactions and things like that. But if you really want to be intentional about your presence, you have to work on it. You have to learn about the different aspects of virtual presence. And it might seem like not a big thing, but really how we show up and most of our interactions start off virtually now, at least I think in the corporate world. And so focusing on that, learning how to really show up, I think has made a world of difference for me. And then I also see it with my clients as well. If you know you're looking good, you're showing up well, it just naturally will give you that confidence and make you seem more competent as well.
Absolutely. And talking about disciplining yourself or getting yourself structured in a way where you're developing how you are seen by others, what are the key elements or behaviors that contribute to a leader developing strong presence?
I think the main thing to keep in mind is intentionality. And in my book that's coming out next year, I have a whole chapter on mindset. And really, the whole premise of the book is really about being really intentional about your presence. Because I think it's so easy to go about our days and just do what we've always been doing. Or, work is busy, there's a lot going on. We have even more distractions now in this day and age. And so, being really intentional and pausing and saying, okay, what do I want for myself? How do I want to be seen? How do I create a brand that everyone knows about that aligns with what's important to me? So that intentionality piece is really key. And then I think the mindset around it too, right? Like some people might think, oh, presence, that's for executives. I don't really need to worry about that right now. But the earlier you can start, the better because you now are building that up over time. It accumulates over time, right? Like all these things, the reputation you build, the network, the people you're meeting, all of that, in the future it will lead to a stronger future. And then also when you're in those moments where maybe you're like, oh no, I just got laid off or something happened that you weren't expecting, you are ready for that moment.
Earlier, I spoke about a person seeing you somewhere. If
Mhm.
you are not working on that, they can't see you there. And so it's important to do just as you just stated, because your future does depend on it. And
Yeah.
sometimes you don't realize how impactful your lack of being intentional will
Mhm.
will do to your career. So think
Absolutely.
about that while you're preparing. Now, in a world that we live in today, there's been a clamor for authenticity, especially at leadership, right? In the leadership realm. So, how can leaders authentically cultivate presence without coming across overly self promotional or inauthentic?
A lot of people ask about authenticity, and to your point, Enrique, I feel like authenticity is kind of a buzzword these days. I think it really boils down to relationships. And I think when people think about presence or maybe building their brand, to your point, they think, oh, I'm like that bragging person, or I'm always doing the humble brag, or I'm just always like marketing myself. And no one wants to be that annoying person. So they kind of pull back and they don't lean into that. But I think when you build strong relationships, people know that's not you, right? If you're that person who never says anything, you don't know anyone at work, and then you're coming in talking about this great project that you led, yeah, you might seem like you're bragging. No one really knows who you are foundationally. But the more you can open up yourself at work, build those relationships, that changes, right? Oh, I know this person now, and I know he's been working really hard on this. Oh, I'm so excited for him. Let's celebrate that. So I think relationships are really key. And then with relationships, you do things like build trust, for example, right? So that's really the foundational piece of it. And I also just want to add that authenticity is really becoming more valued in leaders. There was this really interesting study in the Harvard Business Review, and it was looking at executive presence more specifically. And it was across gravitas, communication, and appearance. And the study compared how people saw gravitas, communication, appearance in 2012, so various adjectives, and then how they saw executive presence in 2022. And authenticity actually showed up twice. So in communication and appearance. So I think that's good news so that if people are worried, oh, executive presence, I have to look a certain way, look buttoned up or be a certain way. No, people are actually valuing authenticity now. So hopefully that gives your audience some encouragement if they're like, I don't know if this is for me. It is for you.
A great encouragement indeed, because a lot of people are trying to be something else that they're
Yeah.
not in order to get somewhere. And
Hmm.
oftentimes they lose themselves. And then when they get in the position, they try to bring themselves and they're like, who's this? Right. And so there is a
Yeah.
definite clash. And so it's good to hear that within your authenticity, you can build this presence. And so do not fear for whatever molds are out there and people are putting folks in,
Yeah.
bring your true self and you can also succeed. So, yes, great news to hear that. Now, we don't operate alone, right? When we're talking about leadership, when we're talking about corporate settings, we're often in groups, teams, and things of that nature. So, how does presence influence team performance and organizational culture?
When you are a leader or a manager of a team, I think presence is even more important. Not only are more people looking at you and your presence and your actions and the things that you say, so there's a bigger spotlight on you, you now have the responsibility to build out the presence of your teams, right? So it's not just about, okay, I need to promote my work, I need to make it clear what I do. Now it's about, oh, I need to figure out how to really show my team to this company, make them shine in front of stakeholders, senior leaders, etc. And so building presence by knowing how to advocate for your team, teaching them how to advocate for themselves, teaching them how to share learnings and wins in a way that is authentic, in a way that helps others and doesn't come across as braggy. So I think expanding or presence becomes even more important because now you are expanding it, not just with yourself, but also with your team. And so I think that's a new skill that a lot of managers and leaders need to learn because you're just not used to it, but it goes a long way in not only letting your team shine and letting others see that, but also showing that you yourself are a good leader because really you are in service of your team.
Absolutely. And I'll give you a small example that as you were talking, I was
Yeah.
reminded of. I was part of a industry or organization, let's just say company, and my presence in different settings
Mm.
had people thinking that my team was as equal to the presence I brought. And so
Right.
I heard a lot of times, hey, a lot of people are paying attention to me because you're our manager. And I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
that's great, you
Yeah.
know? But in that, and which is great. A leader should be setting that precedence for their team, right? Now, their team members have to obviously perform at that level. But in my case, my team did. And
Yeah.
so what happened was that my presence allowed leaders or, leaders that were running things to assume something that they proved right. And so
Yeah.
it was a win-win situation for everyone there, but it is important. It started with the leader, whether it was me or someone else. That's where that started. And so I encourage leaders to take that on. You could be setting your team up for success just by being you. And so that's a good thing to remember. Now,
Yeah.
you talked about this book that's coming out
Yeah.
and I want you to speak about that. What do you have coming up? How can we be part of it? And
Yeah.
how can the listener or viewer get a hold of you if they want to chat?
Of course. Thank you for asking. Yeah. So my book is coming out April 22nd of next year. I am finishing up writing it right now. So we're in crunch time. I'll be doing some edits later today after this podcast. But Um, so the book is called Unforgettable Presence, Get Seen, Gain Influence, and Catapult Your Career. And if you'd like to learn more, you can visit lorraineklee.com/book. And you can subscribe to a special newsletter where I will be sharing insights. So I interviewed 3 dozen business leaders, executives, professionals at the top of their game, right? Like some stand-up comedians, for example. And have been able to add their insights in addition to my insights. So if you want to stay up to date with some behind the scenes content, get updates on those posts I'm making, sharing some of their insights, teasing some of them, you can subscribe to my newsletter there. And then for anyone who wants to pre-order, there is a form at the bottom of that page where you can upload your receipt and you'll get some goodies TBD, but some goodies and bonuses as well for me from me to say thank you for that. And if anyone wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm always happy to do that. Send me a note, let me know you heard me on this podcast. And yeah, I think those are the main places.
Outstanding. Well, folks, we'll have all those links as part of the video and show notes so that you can get a hold of Lorraine, a hold of her book, get a hold of the goodies. I know I'm going to get some of that as I order my
Yeah.
copy. But thank you, Lorraine, so much for taking this time with me to share presence. And it's an important topic for leadership.
Yeah.
Folks, I would be remiss if I did not mention being in Orlando, that when this airs, we will be on the other side of a very destructive hurricane. And so I hope and pray that everyone makes it okay. And when you get to listen to this, know that we've been praying for you over the next couple of days for your safety and anything in that order. Today's episode is sponsored by Fantail Services and Superpass, which are powering our website and app, Southern Sweet and Sassy Coffee, the Outlier Project, and dooko. If you've enjoyed this episode and learned something interesting about the topic covered today, make sure to subscribe and let us know by leaving a comment. And we're always looking for new ideas and guests that we can add to our show. So if you know someone or have a topic that you would like featured on the podcast, please let us know by leaving us an email at triadleadershipsolutions@gmail.com. And this podcast is brought to you by StreamYard, a browser-based tool that lets you live stream to any platform and record podcasts in studio quality. And we're using it to record this podcast. Be sure to tune in next week for another episode where we dissect leadership from another angle. And as we like to end the show, success to you.